Greetings, and thank you for this opportunity to share the excitement that Deb and I have for this 10X Tamworth project. I am really thrilled to be able to be involved with proposing this, and I just recall last August when I was visiting Tamworth, I had the opportunity to meet with a small group of leaders from the community, and there were just some things that really stood out to me, that impressed me about where Tamworth is and where this group was. And that was that they represented a microcosm, if you will, of community leaders who are really passionate and represent a tremendous wealth for the community. Secondly, I would say that I met people who were leading organizations who were life-giving in their organizational leadership and who had already demonstrated results. And then the third thing is I really recognize the mindset, which is that we can make a difference here. We can do it together and we can make a difference here. That really stood out for me. And in thinking about that, I was thinking our mission in relation to the 10X Tamworth project is really to activate and release the untapped potential of community leaders. And we see the potential that exists. We recognize that in connecting that potential one to another and the synergy that comes from that there's just outstanding opportunity here that we want to take advantage of. My own passion for community extends back into childhood when, in growing up, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, where I had a very large extended family. And so I grew up in the midst of family gatherings and Saturday nights and holidays and all that. And there was just a sense of what it meant to be in an extended community, even at that time. Unfortunately, when I was 12 years old, my dad died, and that had a profound effect on me. I turned inward, and I really lost the sense of community. It felt like it just dissolved around me. Not so much because of the family, but much more because of me. And I realize today that there are actually two primary decisions that could be made at that point. One is to commit to regain that deep sense of belonging and connectedness that I had in the family. Or the other is to go the other way and to kind of withdraw totally and get involved in things that are probably not as healthy. Fortunately, I chose personally and also in terms of professional career to commit to create community everywhere I went. And so it's been a long history of making that commitment, following through on that commitment. And in that journey, one of the things that I really recognize as a key to it is collaboration. The way in which leaders work together, the way in which the synergy of that leadership works together, and the organizations that are involved work together for the good of the whole. And that's one of the things that we're very much focused on here at the 10X Tamworth project. There are a couple of perspectives that I want to share just in terms of how we think about what we do. One of those perspectives has to do with what contributes to community. And there are four things that clearly we can elaborate in much more detail, but just to simply speak them out. One is belonging, just that sense that I have an identity in this entity, which in this case would be the city of Tamworth, the area of Tamworth. Secondly is the emotional connection through relationship. And in our case, our focus is going to be on leadership, community leadership, and the building of those emotional connections between leaders that allow you to go beyond your own naturally encircled area of interest and area of influence, and extending that through relationship. Many of you already have that, and we just believe that drawing the entire community into that type of relationship is very powerful and something we are committed to do. The third aspect of contribution to a community is really influence. And that is, do the members of the community actually believe that they have influence, that what's important to them is important to the community, and what's important to them is paid attention to, that they have a voice. And this is something I know that every community can do better at, and certainly we're committed to focus on that and to help bring that kind of influence across the board to multiple leaders, and through those leaders into the connections that they have with one another. And then the fourth component of contribution that we'll focus on is really need fulfillment. And that is that different segments of society experience very real needs. And so the question then becomes, how do those needs get met with the resources that are available? And one of the things that we know about resources is that they magnify when we start to collaborate, when we start to offer what we have to others and in return receive what they have. That collaboration leads to that magnification of resources that meet needs. And so the deep listening that goes on for identifying the needs and then responding to them is part of what we'll pay attention to. The second perspective that I would just share with you really has to do with the sequence of how we think about this. And that has three components to it: identity, vision, and strategy. Identity is who you are, and we typically think of that in individual terms, but each entity, and in this case Tamworth, has its own identity. And the question becomes, are we one or are we many parts that compete based on self-interest? And of course, there's no simple single answer to that. But we believe that having an identity, a unified identity, is a key to releasing a community vision. That vision is what enables people to orient, to know what direction they are going, and collectively synergize their efforts for the common good. And clearly, that's a major undertaking. This is a long-term project, and we know that. But we also recognize that taking the initiative right now carries us forward and enables us to make a project like this turn into a movement. And that's a very powerful concept itself. And then the third thing is strategy. And we recognize that multiple strategies are needed to fulfill a vision as big as what we're talking about for Tamworth in the 10X project. And those strategies mean that there's plenty of room for many community leaders to do what they're very best at doing. And when we talk about tapping untapped potential, we're talking about releasing whatever those gifts and talents are for the leaders in the way that they lead individually, they lead organizations, and they lead in the community. So those are three components of this, of what we talk about, the sequence. And then the third perspective has to do with our approach. And we talk about three components of that approach. One is the 10X principle, one is level up leading, and one is systemic thinking. The 10X principle is pretty simple. It just says that we want to create exponential growth. And the way we do that is we force ourselves to ask really big questions, very challenging questions that take us to address the most urgent issues as well as everyday foundational infrastructure issues. Issues that only get resolved with a different way of thinking and a way of challenging the existing status quo that, in a way, constrains us in our success. So 10X thinking is representing that symbol of out-of-the-box, creative, inspirational, doing things that really take Tamworth to a whole new level. Level up leading is a transformational leadership development approach that we take, and the essence of that is that we begin from the inside out. That as we transform ourselves as individuals, we then are able to transform our organizations and our community. And I mean, there's a whole lot of detail in that, but that's kind of the core of it. And then systemic thinking really has to do with the fact that we recognize that a community is a system of or ecosystems, and that ecosystems are representing the interconnectivity of our lives. And so as we focus on that, as we energize that, we recognize that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And by focusing on the system and not just the individual parts, we're able to create an incredibly generative outcome, something that's very powerful and something that works well together. Now, being an outsider, which I am, of course, it's possible to see things that maybe people who live in the community have just gotten so used to, and they don't necessarily realize what resources they have. I would say from just the perspective I have and from interaction with Deb and with others, I just see such enormous potential for growth in Tamworth. And, you know, I really kind of want to hold that flag up, that standard up, and say, yeah, you guys can really do this. And it's not a difficult task. It's a committed task, but it's not a difficult task. And so that's really my exhortation is I'm excited about this, and I'm hoping that you guys will join us in whatever way makes sense to you, that we can contribute our mutual energies into working in Tamworth in a way that we create a community engagement that honors the people of Tamworth, that prepares them for growth, and that really extends the possibilities that exist for you. And so I just want to thank you for this time, this opportunity, and look forward to seeing you in August when I come again.